The Liberal-controlled House Justice Committee has just voted in favor of inviting former Justice Minister Jody Wilson-Raybould to testify over the SNC-Lavalin affair. But will she speak?
I am still consulting with my legal counsel, as I think people can appreciate or should appreciate the rules and laws around privilege, around confidentiality, around my responsibility as a member of Parliament.
Joining us now from Ottawa is Conservative leader Andrew Scheer. Mr. Scheer, it's a busy time in the nation's capital. We appreciate your time today. Since the scandal broke, you and the opposition have been united in asking for Jody Wilson-Raybould to speak. Now that she's been invited by the Justice Committee, will she in fact speak? What are your expectations here?
Well, it's still not entirely clear as to whether or not Justin Trudeau will waive whatever privilege he thinks he may have in this case. He's been speaking for Ms. Wilson-Raybould for quite some time now. All he's done so far is ask Canadians to take him at his word. But when we look at the sequence of events, including these very serious allegations of interference in a criminal proceeding, the resignation of Ms. Wilson-Raybould herself, now the resignation of Justin Trudeau's most senior advisor, there's clearly something more here than just what Justin Trudeau would have us believe.
Mr. Scheer, the NDP tabled a motion calling for a public inquiry into this affair. You and your team have backed that as well. If it gets voted down in the House of Commons, what's the next step? Where do you go from there?
Yeah, we're very hopeful that Liberal MPs, especially those Liberal MPs who are lawyers, who have taken an oath to uphold the rule of law, will support our motion. So we remain hopeful on that. It is very strange. We're seeing a political maneuvering from the government. We're not seeing transparency and openness. Ms. Wilson-Raybould is now apparently invited to speak to committee this week after a closed-door meeting with the Liberal caucus. This is precisely what we were asking for last week, so it's not clear as to why there's been a sudden change in tactic. As well, they are refusing to hear from Gerald Butts himself, the Prime Minister's senior advisor. So we'd rather just have an open inquiry where we have an independent person come in and conduct a full and transparent inquiry into what actually happened. That's obviously better than just hearing from Liberals when they choose to speak and when they've got their damage control plan in place. We'd rather just have this all out in the open. So there's still some tools available to us. We're going to keep pushing at the House Justice Committee as well. The Senate has started proceedings of their own. So that's also an avenue. But again, you know, we're still looking at other options as information comes to light.
We've got to go back to where this all started. SNC-Lavalin is huge in Canada, employing Canadians across the country. Wouldn't it make sense for any Prime Minister to be in discussions on deferred prosecution agreements with a company of this size? I mean, you yourself met with executives from the company in May. If you were Prime Minister today, what would your position be on SNC-Lavalin as it relates to criminal charges and deferred prosecution?
Well, the key here is the difference between Parliament giving a tool to a Crown prosecutor, or in this case, the Director of Public Prosecutions, and political interference in that decision. So it's not only well and good, it's part of our parliamentary tradition that elected officials, government, pass laws. We set penalties. We also give options to judges and Crown prosecutors, both on the individual and the corporate side, as to what tools can be used to uphold the rule of law. But we don't then get involved in the carrying out of that justice system. And that's what we're talking about here, that when SNC-Lavalin didn't get the answer they wanted from the independent Director of Public Prosecutions, that's when the lobbying really kicked into high gear. That's when they had at least 50 meetings with key figures in the government. That's when it looks like Justin Trudeau then went and met with Ms. Wilson-Raybould. We still don't know how many times that happened where that was brought up. So that's a huge difference between allowing our justice system to have a tool in the toolkit, in this case, deferred prosecution agreements, which independent judicial figures can decide whether or not it's appropriate. But if a judge in a criminal case sentenced someone to jail and then the Prime Minister started leaning on the Justice Minister to get that sentence reduced, that would be, not only inappropriate, that would likely be illegal. That's a similar set of circumstances as what we're seeing here, where the independent Director of Public Prosecutions determined that SNC-Lavalin was not eligible for the special deal that the Liberals had passed just a few months prior, that the criteria that the government set out did not apply to SNC-Lavalin. That is a decision of an independent judicial agent. What we're looking at now is whether or not the Prime Minister's office or the Prime Minister himself got involved to the point where very well they could have been interfering with the course of justice.
Mr. Scheer, thank you for your time this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.